Let me begin by telling you a story not of someone else, but of you. You, the seeker. You, the one who sat in the dark one night, asking the universe, "Is this all there is?" That moment wasn't random. It was a fracture in time, a glitch in the matrix of your old identity. That was the beginning. What follows is not a teaching, it is a remembering. A remembering so ancient and so buried beneath layers of illusion that when it surfaces, it may terrify you before it frees you. We're going to explore 7 quantum shifts, not steps, not idea shifts. Because when the ego dissolves at a quantum level, it's not linear. It's not logical. It's like being ripped out of a dream and realizing you were never awake to begin with. But first, you must understand this spiritual ego is not the ego of the world. It's more dangerous, more subtle, more cunning. Why? Because it wears the robes of wisdom, the smile of peace, and the language of light. It tells you you've awakened when really you've just built a more beautiful prison. Have you ever caught yourself judging someone for not being spiritual enough? That was it. That was the spiritual ego whispering, "You are above them." And in that moment, you weren't free, you were shackled by invisible gold chains. Ask yourself now, when did your quest for truth become a performance? The first quantum shift comes when we realize that awakening is not an achievement, it's a stripping away, a brutal unraveling. Imagine climbing a mountain for years, only to discover the summit was an illusion, and the real journey begins when you fall off the edge. That's the shift. You stop climbing. You stop reaching. You stop needing to be more spiritual. And suddenly, in the free fall, you find stillness. You find the raw, unfiltered now. The ego cannot survive there because there's nothing to compare, nothing to prove. You must ask yourself, what am I without the identity of a seeker?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The second shift hits harder because it destroys your most treasured beliefs. You begin to see that your love for certain teachings, certain gurus, certain practices was actually attachment. You didn't love the truth. You loved the comfort those truths gave you. And when someone challenges those beliefs, you feel threatened not because they're wrong, but because they're shaking the foundation of your spiritual identity. This is sacred disillusionment. It burns, it humiliates, but it also purifies. You begin to love truth more than your version of it. You stop defending ideas and, instead, open to direct experience. Can you let go of even your most beautiful spiritual beliefs? The third shift begins when silence becomes more nourishing than knowledge. You start to notice that the more you speak of awakening, the further you drift from it. Words become slippery. Concepts become prisons. You realize that quoting Rumi or Buddha does not make you wise. It only reveals how much you still need to borrow light. So you go quiet not out of fear, but reverence. You stop trying to impress others with how much you know, and instead, you sit in the mystery. You become the question, not the answer. And this is where something strange happens. People start to feel something around you. They don't know what it is. They just feel home. You're not teaching anymore. You're transmitting. And then comes the fourth shift, and it's terrifying. It's when the universe stops giving you spiritual highs. No more synchronicities, No more visions. No more blissful meditations, just nothing. A vast, dry silence. The ego panics. It says, "What happened? Am I doing something wrong?" But this is the desert of the soul. This is where saints are born. Because here you learn to love without reward, and to meditate without expectation, to serve without recognition. You die here. And in that death, the false light of spiritual ego is replaced by the dark, fertile void of the real. Can you love the path even when it gives you nothing? The fifth shift is surrender, not the romantic kind, but the annihilating kind. At first you thought surrender meant letting go of outcomes. But now it means letting go of the one who wants to surrender. You begin to see that even your desire to awaken is ego. Even your longing to be free is a form of control. This realization cracks you open. You stop trying to surrender, and instead you fall into the great unraveling. You become the leaf in the wind, the wave in the ocean. You no longer seek God, you dissolve in God. The you that wanted union is gone. What remains is what always was: silence, stillness, infinity. The sixth shift is integration, and this is where many fall back into illusion. After glimpsing the infinite, the ego sneaks back in and says, "Let's teach others. Let's write a book. Let's share this wisdom." And if you're not careful, the spiritual ego is reborn stronger, subtler, slicker. But if you've truly seen through it, you'll know this: truth doesn't need a stage. Light doesn't announce itself. So you return to simplicity. You wash dishes with presence. You walk without needing to be noticed. You laugh easily. You cry without shame. You become profoundly human. Enlightened, not because you float above life, but because you are deeply embedded in it without identity. Can you be no one, going nowhere, doing nothing, and still feel whole? The seventh and final shift is eternal recurrence. It's the realization that awakening is not a destination, it's a rhythm, a spiral, a dance. You will forget again. You will fall into ego again. But now you know. Now you see. And from this place, even your falls become sacred. Even your mistakes become offerings. There is no shame here, only the ongoing surrender into mystery. You become a living question mark, not seeking answers, but embodying the awe of existence itself. Now I want you to pause, feel your breath, feel your body, and ask yourself this: who is the one listening right now? Who is the one nodding in agreement or resisting what's being said? That, my friend, may be the last illusion to dissolve. As we continue deeper into this journey, you may begin to feel a strange mixture of liberation and unease. This is natural. The spiritual ego doesn't surrender easily. It is not a villain, but it is clever. It adapts. It disguises itself as purity, as compassion, even as humility. It says, "I'm not like those other egos. I've transcended." But this, too, is its voice. You must become a silent observer of your own mind, not with judgment, but with the still awareness of a mountain watching a storm. When you feel superior to another because of your spiritual knowledge, pause and ask, who is feeling superior? The answer is not a concept, it is a mirror. We've spoken of 7 quantum shifts, but these are not steps to be climbed. They are collapses. Each one is a disintegration of a layer of self. And in each collapse, something deeper, older, and more vast reveals itself not as a new identity, but as the absence of identity. That is the paradox. The more you dissolve, the more you become, but not as a someone, as space, as presence. Your very being becomes a doorway through which others can remember their own essence. And this is where the true spiritual work begins, not in teaching, but in being. Let's return to the 4th shift for a moment, the spiritual drought. This phase is not talked about enough because it doesn't sell. It doesn't sparkle, but it is sacred. It is where the false light dies. You feel abandoned by the universe. Your practices stop working. Your insights dry up. You start to doubt everything. But this doubt is a gift. Because what dies here is not truth, it is your attachment to feeling spiritual. It is your need to be high on divine energy. And when all of that is stripped away, what remains is the raw, unadorned presence of what is. Can you stay there naked, empty, without even a mantra to hold? This is the dark night of the soul. Yes, but it's also the womb of the soul. It's where the real is gestating. You are not being punished. You are being emptied so that the infinite can pour through you unfiltered. But emptiness is unbearable to the ego. So it will try to fill the silence with concepts, with practices, with spiritual identities. Don't fall for it. Stay empty. Stay still. When the silence becomes louder than your thoughts, you are near the threshold. And when you cross it, you will not find fireworks. You will find peace. Not the peace of pleasure, but the profound stillness that needs nothing. And then the ego returns. Yes, it always returns. But now you know its face. You no longer believe its stories. It may say you've lost your way or you're not progressing. But now you smile because you've seen through the game. You've stopped measuring your growth. You've stopped needing to arrive. This is the 6th shift, true humility. Not the performative kind, but the kind that says, I am nothing, and in that nothingness, I am free. You no longer seek to be a master. You become a student of the moment. And this is where the deepest wisdom is transmitted, not through words, but through how you sit, how you breathe, how you love. Can you love without needing to be seen as loving? Can you serve without needing to be thanked? Can you share without needing to be followed? These questions cut deeper than any mantra. They reveal the hidden motivations behind our most spiritual actions. And when you see them, don't judge them, just see them. Awareness alone is enough. Awareness itself is the cleansing fire. The spiritual ego cannot survive in the light of pure seeing. Now, a word of warning. After the 6th shift, there is a temptation to retreat, to disappear into silence forever. And for some, that is their path. But for many, the final shift is not withdrawal, it is return. Not return to ego, but return to life. Fully human, fully present, with all your flaws, your fears, your laughter, your heartbreak. You discover that the divine is not beyond the world, it is within it, within the laughter of a child, within the pain of loss, within the ordinary. This is the 7th shift, embodiment. The realization that awakening is not an escape from life, but a full embrace of it. You walk through the world like a ghost made of light, not detached, but deeply connected. You feel everything. You are no longer trying to protect yourself from pain or cling to pleasure. You have seen that all experiences are passing waves on the ocean of being. The spiritual ego can't survive here because there's no one left to protect, no one left to perform, just presence, just now, just this. And here's the mystery. The more you dissolve, the more the world opens to you. You begin to see God not as a separate being, but as the very fabric of existence, in the eyes of a stranger, in the silence between sentences, and in the rhythm of your own breath, and you realize you were never seeking God. God was seeking you. Through your longing, through your mistakes, through your pride and your shame. Every step, even the most egoic, was a part of the choreography. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was wrong. Now, something beautiful happens. You stop trying to teach. You stop needing to guide others, but your very being becomes a lighthouse. Not because you're trying to be one, but because you've become transparent to the light. People feel something around you not because of your words, but because of your emptiness. Because you offer no resistance, no agenda, no persona, just presence. And in that presence, others begin to remember. Not you, but themselves. So we return to the original question. Who are you without your spiritual identity? Not what are you, but who. And not the answer you've memorized, but the silence that remains when all answers fall away. That silence is your true name. That stillness is your true nature. You don't need to find it. You are it. You have always been it. But now you remember. And you smile. Not the smile of victory, but the smile of recognition. A quiet knowing that behind the illusion of self, behind the drama of the seeker and the sought, there is only this breath, this moment, this silence. Now that we stand in the stillness, let us not rush to fill it. Let us rest here, even if only for a breath, in the profound knowing that nothing more needs to be added to you. You are not a project to be completed. You are not a broken soul that needs fixing. The spiritual ego thrives on the story that you must become something greater, more evolved, more enlightened. But the final shift, the one we rarely speak of, because it cannot be taught, is the death of becoming. It is the quiet, almost invisible flowering of being. You are already what you seek. The veil is thin, not because the truth is hidden, but because the ego is loud. And yet, even here, the ego may whisper, "Yes, I know this. I've heard this before. Be careful." The spiritual ego feeds most on spiritual familiarity. It wears the robes of insight and repeats the words of sages, but it has not tasted the living truth of them. This is why the most dangerous place in your journey is when you think you've arrived. Because what feels like arrival is often just a more refined illusion. The spiritual ego doesn't need to be arrogant to survive. It can live in your humility, in your service, in your silence. Watch it gently and with love. Not as an enemy, but as a child who still believes it must earn love. Ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when there is no audience for your enlightenment, no one to validate your progress, no mirror to reflect your image? This is where the final illusions dissolve. Not in the ashram, not in the retreat, not even in the peak moment of meditation, but in the mundane, the forgotten spaces. Washing dishes, waiting in traffic, listening deeply without needing to respond. These are the temples of the awakened heart. Not because they are special, but because the awakened one sees no distinction between sacred and ordinary. Everything is God, or nothing is. And so we begin again, full circle, but not as the seeker, as the space in which seeking appears and disappears, as the awareness that holds all identities but clings to none. This is not a concept, not a philosophy, it is the most intimate truth. And yet, it cannot be possessed. The moment you claim it, the moment you say, "I am enlightened," it slips through your fingers. That is why the greatest masters often appear foolish, simple, even childlike. They have nothing to defend, nothing to prove. They are not interested in impressing you, they are too busy being what you already are but have forgotten to notice. Let's return to the body now. Feel your chest rise and fall. Feel the breath that requires no effort. This, too, is a teacher. It does not strive. It does not perform. It simply is. This is your true nature. The problem is not that you are too egoic, too broken, too asleep. The problem is that you are trying too hard to be anything else. The spiritual ego thrives on effort. But grace requires surrender, and surrender is not something you do, it is what remains when the doer dissolves. Can you allow that? Now we must speak of a truth that many avoid. The spiritual path will humble you in ways you cannot imagine. Not because the universe is cruel, but because truth is ruthless in its love. It will strip you of every false identity, every hidden motive, every subtle performance. It will expose the places where you still seek power, even if that power wears the face of peace. It will reveal where you still crave control, even if that control is disguised as discipline. And it will ask you again and again, are you willing to lose everything that is not real? You see, the spiritual ego is not evil, it is just afraid. It is the part of you that believes it must be someone to be loved. It tries to build the perfect persona, the perfect practice, the perfect understanding, not to deceive others, but to protect itself. When you see this, you begin to love the ego, not fight it. You hold it gently, like a child who has had a nightmare and doesn't yet know they are safe. And in your love, not your resistance, it begins to soften, to dissolve. This is the alchemy. Not in transcending the ego, but in embracing it so fully that it no longer needs to exist. And then something miraculous happens. You stop trying to be awake, you just are. You stop trying to be present, you simply notice that you never left. You stop trying to love, and love flows through you like breath. Not because you've achieved something, but because you've let go of trying. This is the paradox. The less you try to be spiritual, the more your life becomes a sacred expression. You become ordinary in the most extraordinary way. A quiet presence, a space of stillness, a mirror in which others can see their own reflection clearly. Now, let's look at your relationships. Are you present with others, or are you subtly performing? Are you listening, or are you waiting for your turn to speak your truth? Are you offering love, or are you trading approval for validation? The spiritual ego hides in relationships more than anywhere else. It wants to be admired, to be seen as wise, as kind, as awakened. But true presence is not concerned with perception. It is concerned only with connection. Can you show up without a mask, without a need, without a label? Can you love without needing to be the one who loves? And in your solitude, what do you find? Are you seeking silence because you crave peace, or because silence makes you feel superior? Are you avoiding people because they disturb your vibration, or because your ego cannot tolerate being triggered? These are hard questions, but they are holy. They peel back the layers. They dismantle the fortress of the spiritual self. And in the rubble, something tender emerges, something real. It is not impressive. It is not powerful. But it is alive, and it is free. This is the ultimate shift, from spiritual identity to raw presence, from the illusion of mastery to the truth of mystery, from knowing to unknowing, from effort to grace, from self to source. And once you taste this, you cannot go back. Not because you reject the old ways, but because something deeper has claimed you. You belong to the silence now, to the truth that needs no defense, or to the light that casts no shadow. You have become what you always were. And so we end, not with a conclusion, but with an invitation, not to do more, not to become more, but to be less, to be nothing, to be the space in which all things arise, and in that nothingness, to know the fullness of all. This is not a script. It is a mirror. It is your own voice calling you home. So I leave you with one final question. A question that cannot be answered with words, only with presence. Who are you when you stop trying to be? Let the silence answer.